pursuit of wealth, where the H is surrounded by abundance. Today, we'd like to welcome you with open arms, open hearts, and open minds to our show today. And today, we have the wonderful, beautiful Lisa Kendall. Lisa is a certified therapeutic art coach, life coach, and artist. She coaches women in facilitating shifts in their life. She helps her clients improve purposeful living, relationship communication, manage pain, express spirituality, attain goals, and develop personal growth strategies using therapeutic art, therapeutic journaling, and traditional coaching methods. She also works with teenagers in their need to express emotion, express emotion, set goals, and build confidence. There is no previous art experience needed, just a desire to grow as a person. And she is passionate about helping others and mentoring those who are ready to find joy, be their authentic selves, and live their most vibrant lives. Wow. We're so honored to have you on our show today. Thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you. I'm so excited to be here and always excited to talk about a topic that inspires me, especially when I see the way it inspires others.
I bet that probably only helps to nurture and foster that within yourself. So
yeah.
how did you get started? It seems like such a niche area to work, but I'm so intrigued about it all.
Thank you. Yeah, it's, if somebody said, what will you be doing 10 years down the road? I could not have pictured that I would have been here. But on the flip side, it encompasses everything that I've ever done professionally and everything that I've ever loved doing. It covers the art, the spirituality, the creativity, the psychology, which are all things that have been lifelong interests. I always joke that I grew up on Tony Robbins because my father used to give me the cassette tapes. And as I would drive from university back home on weekends, that's what I would listen to. And so it's sort of in my DNA. 16 years old, my father put Stephen Covey's book on my bed, 7 Habits of Highly Effective Reading, and said, why don't you read this, Lisa? There were no other of my peers reading those books, but I soaked it up. My journey started in this particular area, though, when I was really fighting with about a 10-year bout of chronic headaches. And to manage my own pain, I decided to go back to painting, which I had done in college. And over the years, I had other creative pursuits. I had a 10-year business where I designed and sold jewelry. Prior to that, I had a business where I painted and refinished furniture. But really in hopes of just managing my own discomfort, I went back to the basics: canvas, acrylic paints, watercolor pencils. And I found myself in a headspace of total and complete relaxation that actually helped me manage the pain. And at the time, I thought, well, this is wonderful. I can actually do something that's fun, that makes me feel inspired and feel better all at once. It was like the best prescription ever. And I went and spoke to a mentor of mine who's, and I said, I'm loving this. I'm loving being messy again and getting my hands dirty and creating, and I'm getting so much joy out of it. Is this it, or is there something more? And my mentor said to me, Lisa, this is incredible, but you're supposed to do this to help other people. And the light bulb went on. I remember, in the previous couple of years, looking at masters in art therapy and various programs. And I felt torn because I have 3 kids, ages 20, 19, and 18, 2 of which are in college. And I really didn't know if I wanted a third college tuition, to factor in. And so then I started looking at certification programs, which seemed a little more tangible, a little more realistic for the amount of time. I also feel like the life experience that I have really qualifies me for a lot of what I do. I have a background in education and in curriculum development, and a lot of that around art. And so when you put it together with this, it really, a lot of my background really applies to what I'm actually doing. But what I did after I got off the phone with this mentor of mine, took my 2 dogs for a walk, and I was walking past an alley I've walked by hundreds and hundreds of times. And up against the dumpster was this beautiful painting just sitting there, this acrylic, colorful painting of a man playing the violin. And I almost got chills. And I thought, I've never seen this a gorgeous painting just discarded up against a dumpster. I thought, is the universe putting this there for me? Is this my sign? And I walked by and I'm like, I'm not going to take it. It doesn't belong to me, even though it's by a dumpster. And I just kept feeling pulled to go back to it. And finally I thought, wait a minute. There's no way. I just got off the phone with this mentor, told me that I really needed to do this as a career. That is my sign. And if I'm ignoring the obvious, I'm in big trouble. I need to start paying attention. And so I actually went back with my dogs, took the little canvas with me back home, and then never turned back. That was the beginning of this. And so I went on to get certified as a therapeutic art coach, along with other certifications that include positive psychology, law of attraction, and a few others. And so now I run workshops, which are actually my favorite. I work with a sound bowl practitioner, and she brings in the music therapy. I do the art therapy, and it's really to bring people together. Over the last 2 years, these workshops have been a highlight, I think, of people who have been really lonely and suffering in this loneliness pandemic. And I just love when people's faces light up after they've pulled out their markers and crayons and they have an aha moment on paper. And it's just really beautiful. So the workshops are a lot of fun. And I also really cherish the one-on-one clients that I've worked with. There seems to be a common thread of the people, not so much the teenagers, but the women who come to me say, Lisa, my life isn't bad, but I feel like there should be something more, like some more joy, something that's missing. And I want to excavate. I want to dig and figure out what that is. And that's a really fun journey to facilitate and to really show them that they have it all within them. I'm just helping them crack it all open. So that's what I do. And I love it.
That's amazing. And you know, what's just so beautiful about that. And I've kind of experienced this just a tiny bit since I had my daughter, but adults forget how to play. And actually, Julie, you mentioned that recently too, right? Where it's like, sometimes we just forget how to play. And so art is such a beautiful way to connect play to us. And like, after I had my daughter, I thought, well, I really, if you ask me, was I into art or anything like that? I'm like, yeah, no. But if you actually break down creativity abounds. We don't have to just say that it's art, which is one thing that I learned. But the other piece is that after having my daughter, we would do a lot of art together. We still do a lot of art. We still do a lot of creating. And it's the best time that we spend together. She talks to me, she opens up, and I create things that I never knew that I could create. Right. And so it just becomes such a beautiful experience and a beautiful exchange between the two of us. And 3-4 years ago, I probably would have been like, well, that's great that you do it, but I don't know how to do that. But just to see myself sort of develop into this creative space that I didn't identify with.
Yeah.
And I think it just goes back to that, like, adults don't remember how to play. And I think that that's so beautiful that you do that.
Thank you. And that's such a big part of what allowing the process is, right? You're putting yourself, just by getting out the markers and the crayons and all the materials, you're allowing your body to relax and go into this childlike play space of imagination and dreaming and discovery. And as adults, we're all about the to-do list and the practicality and the value of sitting with a blank piece of paper and having some really simple instruction can really start creating some new thought patterns, some new ideas, some new discoveries about ourselves. And I always tell, my clients, there is no art experience necessary. If you can take a marker and you can draw a line, that's great. That's all you need.
You're in.
Yeah, you're in. We do simple stuff. The idea is exactly, Tiffany, to just play.
I love that you say that, because I have often in my adult life said, I haven't got a creative bone in my body. And I know that's not true. My creativity is just expressed in different ways because I don't find myself being skilled or enjoying too much that kind of artistic thing, but I like to make natural cosmetics. I like to cook. I love to write. I mean, those are creative things.
All of them. Yes.
But I actually, and there's a reason for my bringing this up, but I'm pretty sure I was about 7. I was drawing a picture for an art class, and I drew a line of people walking, and they were actually hiking. They had little hiking boots on, and they were walking over a hill. And I drew them from the side. And I remember my art teacher laughing at me and almost scolding me, and other people making fun of me because I only gave people one leg. I'm like, well, I'm looking at them from the side. But there was enough negative input at that point that I never wanted to draw again after that. I never thought I was good at it. I was embarrassed about trying to draw anything. And so I just wonder how many people get caught up in that kind of thing. Like, it obviously unintentional to say something like that to a child, but you never know where you're going to close down those parts of a person's personality.
Yeah,
Right?
Julie, you're so right. And I hear this story over and over again from people. And, I think there's a big reframing that needs to happen around creativity and creative minds. I think we're all innately artists, right? And our artistry comes out in different ways. We as humans are creative thinkers, whether it's in the way we dialogue with our coworkers, or if it's in the way we decorate our house, or if it's in the way we're even putting clothing together. These are all different artistic modalities, right? It doesn't have to look like sketching out the perfect architecture, right? And so I think there's also a lot of messaging that many people have gotten. There's also, in the art world, there's a lot of squelching, I think, too, that gets done around, oh, well, the starving artist, right? Like that whole mentality. You can't, that's a fun hobby, but what's your real career going to be, right? And so a total reframing around being creative and artistic, I think, is so needed, because I think when life is hard and when the world looks like a scary place, I think it's our job to put more love and more beauty into the world. And I think this is the stuff that heals, right? It all starts from within here, and then there's that ripple effect. And so if we can start by telling kids, we're all artists, we're all creative, what does then our world look like if those are the messages our kids get?
And Lisa, let me ask you a question, because I was just kind of thinking about this as we're going through here. Now, when it comes to, because I think that one of like my biggest resistance with art in general is going, well, it never looks the way that I intend. And as an adult, we don't like that, because it's just like anything else. No, we want this to happen. And when it doesn't, it sends us in a bit of a spiral. But at the same time, when I can look at something that I've created and I can think it's beautiful, it only helps extend the beauty around me. Is that what you see? Whereas I created this and it's beautiful, and now I can look towards other things, because I'm really helping to rewire my brain to what beauty really is. Like, I'm looking at that picture over your shoulder, the one with the, looks like almost a heart. And I am so attracted to that. And I just think that is the most beautiful thing I've seen today, but I've opened my eyes and soul to accepting more beauty. Do you find that there's almost a stopping point with your clients prior to working with you, I should say?
Yes. There's a lot of judgment, self-judgment. And I really, set the framework when we work together that this is about the process, and it's about what you think about during the process. The outcome isn't what we're after, right? We're not after some perfected end game. This is a process, just like life is a process, and let's just go through it and let's discover and enjoy. And while we're doing it, we're creating these new neural pathways, right? These cognitive discoveries, but also these tangible things that we're creating, and then looking beautiful because we've put our energy into it and we've put our thoughts into it, right? It's not because it looks like an art piece that you look at in a book, it's because you've done it and you've poured your heart and soul into it. And that's where the love for the piece comes from.
Interesting. I love it.
As you were talking, a couple things come to mind, since often I have to be a deep thinker before I verbalize what it is that I want to say. But first of all, I think your synchronicity, when you were talking before about finding that art piece of the violinist, things in life just don't come out at random. And imagine what life would have been like if you did pass that up. It would have been meant for someone else, or meant for the trash. So for you to just have that intuition of acceptance, allowance, and then forwardness, I think that's something special. As Julie kind of told about her 7-year-old experience, I've also dealt a lot with my own creativity issues. And honestly, it was kind of chronic. So I wanted to be a guitarist and songwriter from the time I was 8 years old until 15. I mean, it was those years, 8 until 15. And I tell you, I was trying constantly to try and write a song, finish a song, or pick up a guitar, play a guitar. And by about 12 or 13, I got so much negative criticism as a mixture of friends, because I was always the new kid going to school, but also with myself, and as an only child, I didn't really have that abidance and guidance of where to go, but it was all kind of up to my own devices. So that eventually, when I continued playing, I had to stop every line, say, "This sucks, go back, try it again," until that perfectionist that's not naturally me became a developed self. My work now, much older, 27, I believe, is all of rewiring that. Rewiring of, where am I creative? How can I express that? Because I'm more of an appreciator, but also I write. And when I write without any intention, it's nice. It's something that I respect, and it's nothing of judgment. So I kind of want to, and all of this comes to the point, we talked to an NLP coach practitioner about a week ago, and we talked to him about beliefs in words and language. Now, that belief in the way of idealizing and coming up with a visual image of ourselves and our expression and our art form can also be limited, or it can be expanded. So I was hoping that you can shed your perspective, your philosophy, and how you go about that when someone just says, I can't do it. And especially teenagers, when they try and create something and they're like, well, here you go.
Yeah. This is such a great, first of all, I love NLP because I do think that everything comes down to mindset, right? So when you are working on neuro-linguistic programming, you are literally rewiring your circuit board to benefit you. And I think, what I say to my teenagers is, this isn't, the same thing I just said to you guys, this isn't about any final product. This is about just letting go into the process and trusting that, that you are perfect exactly as you are. Everything is right about you. That's where we begin. And from that standpoint, let's grow, let's play, let's explore. And we all know not to judge others, but don't judge yourself either. Let yourself just play and explore. There's an author, she wrote Big Magic, a book called Big Magic about creativity. She also wrote Eat, Pray, Love. I'm blanking on her name, but she says in Big Magic that creative ideas are like little blobs of energy floating around. And if you don't grab onto it, it'll float on to the next person who will. So when you get that idea or that thought, instead of doubting it, grab it like you would, like a football flying in the air, just catch it. Because if you don't, somebody else will. And I really think that's true about creative ideas. I think everybody has them, but most people just let them go by, right? They don't grab onto them and then let them take form. You had another question in there that I wanted to answer.
I think it was about resistance, right? Is that more
Yeah,
about
something
resistance?
about
Like,
that.
people
Just
resisting
that quickness
themselves.
to pass
Yes,
off something,
that's the part.
or
Yeah.
maybe it's
And
for the benefit of others, or just the quickness of getting it done.
so one of the things that I do before we even get into the art piece, and this is more of the coaching piece, is we look at our limiting beliefs. We take a really big look into childhood messaging and influences. And this is something I do with my teenagers as well as my adults, but we really take, for instance, I was told to find a real career because art is a hobby. So we write down the messages we were taught. So that would be my message. And then we reframe the message. Art can be a beautiful, adventurous, and supportive career. And so we take all those messages, everything from what kind of student you were to how well, I have a client who says, everybody told me I couldn't pay attention. So I grew up thinking I couldn't pay attention. Meanwhile, he's the CEO of a company with 100 employees under him. Clearly he can pay attention, so it's these messages, but we really, I'm really structured and really firm in my belief that we have to look at these messages. We have to rewrite the ones that work for us and that serve us, because we get to write our story. And then I have strong feelings about doing something tangible with the messages that no longer work. So either burning it, ripping it, scribbling all over it, so that there's some physical way of you putting out that contract with yourself that, hey, I didn't give these messages to me, somebody else did, and I don't have to keep them. I don't have to own them.
I love that. I just had,
beautiful.
Sorry.
No.
I just had that conversation. I'm running a weight loss program for women over 40. And I just had that program this past weekend on our first group call, because we carry labels. And I didn't realize this until fairly recently, like within the last year, about the labels that I'm still carrying. I'm going to be 58 in a couple weeks, and I'm still carrying some of those labels from my youth that I didn't even realize were still hanging there and really honestly standing in my way, because there's that frustration. It's like, why do I feel like I can't do these things? What's, why I'm intelligent and, and yet, keep getting in our own way. It's like, how do we, where do we start just to even become aware that we're doing that to ourselves?
Yeah. And I think a good place to start too is by following your joy. And when you follow your joy and you make it okay to do the things that are joyful, you can sort of assess, if this is something that makes me happy and this is something that I want, the little voices in my head that are naysayers or imposing negative thoughts, where are those coming from? Because if something's making you joyful, right, that's where your spirit and that's where your soul is calling. But we might be weighing that against thoughts of what our parents said and what our teacher said. And so I think that's a great place to start, is by following your joy.
I think that's so beautiful that you say that. And it's something that I've learned, fairly recently too. It's permission giving. I feel like, over my past, few years, but especially expedited into this past year, the growth that I've experienced has just been astronomical. And it's just because I've had so much awareness and allowance of myself. And, we've talked to so many different coaches, and, the beautiful thing is that we're all here to support each other and to support others, even though we might do it a little differently, but the end result is the same. Like, we are, by human design, it is our God-given right to be joyful. What interferes with that largely is ourselves. Well, so wait a minute. I should be joyful, but I'm interfering with that. Yeah, likely you are. And that's something that takes a very conscious thought to change. Like I actually have right here on my board, I want to feel good. So I will try to feel good by choosing a thought that does feel good. I have that as a reminder because there's power in that. There's power in knowing that, wait a minute, if I don't like my thoughts, if my thoughts aren't making me feel good, it's not you. It's not you. It's not that. I have choice. And so when we can empower ourselves, it becomes such a beautiful thing, or such a shifting and turning point, because what I always say is we always want control over things we can't have control over. We can control how we show up, and we can control how we react. And if we focus more on those two things and stay with those two things, life becomes more joyful because we're choosing it. We are choosing it. And so, from the standpoint of art, I'm thinking about it now, and I'm like, well, if that was me behind me, I'd be like, well, here's my divorce. And I don't say this in like a joking way, even though I kind of do, right? Like, here is a representation of my divorce. Here is a representation of my childhood, and it means nothing to anybody else. But I think for the person doing it, and I haven't done it, but tell me if I'm on the right direction here, where I could look at that and see my childhood, not in its darkness and in its beauty, and really understand, because from my seat today, if I'm not consciously aware, every reaction I choose, or I don't think that I choose, but of course it is a choice, is because of something from my childhood. And it's just about identifying that. There's no blame. There's no shame. My mom did this. My dad did this. No, they did the best that they could with the information that they had. Maybe it wasn't right, or maybe it didn't feel appropriate for you and your mind, body, and soul. But the exercise is to be okay with what happens. And now this is what we move forward with. We don't need to be stuck, and we can create our life outside of it.
It's so true. And I'm so glad you said that, because this is something that we also focus on, is that our parents did do the best that they could with the information that we have, right? We're all intrinsically flawed because we are all perfectly human. And so, Tiffany, you're right. It's not a blame game, or why didn't they, or right? They just like us with our kids, they did the best we could, but now we get to decide, where are we going to put the focus, and what are we going to let go of? What are we going to further embrace?